You're listening to the Downshift podcast, where four mates from Melbourne take you trackside for all the action in Formula One, breaking down the races, the drama, and everything in between, all with a little banter and a lot of passion. If you love motorsport and cars, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you're always on the grid with us. And if you want to support the team, leave us a 5-star review so we know how we are doing and what you want to hear more of. So let's get into another action-packed episode. It's lights out, drop the clutch, and let's get racing. Hello and welcome to the Downshift as four mates from Australia talk about the Formula One. We're now going to be previewing the Miami Grand Prix, which will be held this weekend on a track that debuted in 2022 at the Miami International Autodrome that winds its way around the Hard Rock Stadium, which is the home to the NFL's famous Miami Dolphins. It is designed to encourage close racing. So, Huppy, is this going to be an exciting race this weekend?
No, it's not. It's a mediocre track for overtaking usually, so wouldn't expect a huge amount of overtaking with DRS, etc. But it was a safety car last year that worked in Lando's favour, so hopefully there's a bit of action on track. But I think we're expecting a one-stop race. So let's hope that there is some decent overtaking. But so far this year, I think the cars seem to have found some difficulty in dirty air to get overtakes done.
It's going to be boring again, isn't it? Be honest.
Well, hopefully not. We did see Oscar do a ripper overtake on Lewis Hamilton last race in Jeddah and the marbles. That was really good. But he was the only one who really had the balls to try something a bit different and surprise someone with an overtake.
So if it's not going to be overtaking, what are the odds we can get a decent stack out of it and then maybe change things up from that with a safety car?
Well, look,
can we get Lance Stroll to just pile up and ram into someone or do something like that?
Undoubtedly, yes. But as we were saying just before Christian got us into this episode with his 41st attempt at starting it, it is a temporary street circuit. So it's built it's not a real street circuit, but it's made to look like a street circuit. But there are parts of the track that are narrow. There are walls for drivers to hit. So there's a chance that Lance could hit a wall. We can all cross our fingers for that and hope for a safety car.
And don't forget, we also had where between Logan Sargent and Kevin Magnussen had a massive spill last year where Logan was knocked out of the race. Kevin had to pit because he had a front wing destroyed.
To be fair, there's really high odds that's not going to happen this year between those two.
Yeah.
Fair call.
And it's unfortunate. I mean, Logan, bless his soul, he did spend a lot of time in the panel beaters for that team last year, but it did give us a few safety cars and a bit more action, which was good.
If we look at 2024, so 2024 was a race which was Max had qualified P1. He dominated a lot of the practice. This is also a sprint race, so we have one practice on the Friday followed by sprint qualifying. On Saturday, we then had the sprint race followed by race qualifying and then the race on Sunday. If I go back to 2024, as I was saying, Max qualified P1. We saw Checo, who almost took out 3 cars in turn 1, including his teammate Max Verstappen. We had Piastri, who had taken the advantage of getting a place up to third and then getting into second and was chasing Max for half the race until a collision with Carlos Sainz pushed him to the back of the grid as he had to go in for a wing change and battle his way back up to 13th. And we also saw Max, who took out a bollard in a very rare move where he missed the corner and carried the bollard for, I think it was a couple of corners. And then ultimately...
Max missed a corner. That is unusual for him to miss a corner.
I think it was the source of a few good memes as well, Max carrying that bollard around a few corners, yeah.
And that initiated the virtual safety car so they could get out there and grab the bollard. But then, of course, we had the collision between Logan and Kevin to bring out the actual safety car. And so we saw that that impacted the race. And this was Lando Norris's first win. So Lando actually got his first win only back in 2024. I think we were just happy you were saying in our last pod that it's taken Lando 150 races to get 5 wins, and it's taken Oscar 50 to get 5 wins. So we're seeing that.
Something like that. But yeah, I think that was the first glimpse that the McLaren had some real pace last year, at least at certain tracks. So they were on the right path.
So as we get into this year, if we look in regards to the challenge we've got is that we're seeing one-stop races pretty much dominate this season so far, which is creating quite a boring viewing for a lot of us. A lot of pressure on Pirelli to work on the tyre compounds. So, any thoughts in regards to that?
Well, I don't know a lot about the tyres, but I have seen the meme where there's this little circle diagram and it says, people want really fast races, and then they want close races. So Pirelli improves the tyres, and then it goes down to races get too close, people get bored, they want to change, so Pirelli changes the tyres again. So it seems to be in this loop. But then part of that's probably, the engine specifications or the 2026 regs that are changing. So, and we've commented before, like the races are all very close, like cars and the pace of them. And again, you're seeing the memes of where they show the memes, but the little cartoon images where they show the cars racing through the whole, the laps, and they all look pretty close together. And I mean, maybe at the front end it's not so much, but yeah, it's probably part of that cycle where we're back to, maybe next year when the tyres are a bit different or there's a bit of a change, see some more interesting in races going on and more strategy around
comes
tyre.
down to also your qualifying becomes that much more important, that if you're not in the first one or two spots, overtaking has become that more difficult. That is the ultimate challenge now is the quali lap.
Yeah, great for an interesting 10 minutes of qualifying or, the final 10 minutes of qualifying, but maybe not so interesting for the, an hour-long race or an hour and a half long race where you sort of go, well, this is very true. Around and around.
Yeah.
But then, I think we found them in the McLarens, like their tyre management, or Oscar particularly, his tyre management is quite good. So then, maybe that's a bit more of a changes the factor a bit about who's going to do well, how they manage it.
But even with the McLaren advantage, you see most of the drivers stating that McLaren's got an advantage over everyone else. But like in the last race, Oscar was behind Max for the whole first stint, which was 17, 18 laps or something. And it hurt his tyres too much. He couldn't actually keep up with the Red Bull. He lost 4 or 5 seconds to it, or 3 seconds to it. So, yeah, I think the dirty air just hurts them too much. And like you said, Dan, all the cars are, we're at the end of this series of regulations. So all of the different strategies that the teams have put into place to find the right aero package or the right suspension setups, and they've all sort of converged on a very, very similar looking car. Like when these regulations were rolled out years and years ago, people came out with different noses and different types of wing setups, and all these teams went with different directions, but now they've all converged. They're all very close. I noticed, I mentioned, I think on our last podcast, in Q1 last weekend, I think the top 15 cars are all within 9/10 of a second. So the raw speed is there. Whether or not they look after their tyres during a race, they're all different. But hopefully, in 2026, we see some teams going in different directions again. We might see some more variability in performance and better overtaking. But, I guess Pirelli are doing what they can. They're bringing this softer range of tyres again to this race, but I don't think that's going to make much of a difference. All the teams are running the same tyre. They're probably mostly going to start on a medium again, like they did last weekend. I know there was mention during the week, I think one of us saw some news about talking about maybe increasing the speeds through the pit lane or something to try and reduce pit stop times, to maybe encourage teams to think about doing another pit stop. But, in reality, they were talking about cutting 2 seconds off a pit stop. When the total length, the pit traversal time when you do a pit stop might be 20 to 30 seconds. So taking 2 seconds off, it's not going to make a difference. So,
no.
Yeah.
Especially if it's only a one stopper still as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You need either compulsory stops or a maximum fuel drop, bring refueling back, or force them to use more sets of tyres, or, spray the track with water, or do something, to make it more interesting. But
like a skid pad.
Kangaroo out to make them hop around it.
Kangaroos, yeah. Taking a bath first. Yeah, it's tough.
This will be the second weekend of Ferrari's floor upgrade, and we did see a change in the performance for Ferrari last race. And so, from that perspective, is if we look at it for last year, Charles actually got third in last year's race. So there's potential that we could see some better performance from Ferrari at this race. And again, we're looking at Max, who it's really Max who's pulling everything out of that car at the moment. So something could happen there if there is a bit of a bingle, or we've got some tight racing which caused a couple of safety cars. It could really change the outcome for the race.
I think
I'm a little surprised that, like, obviously Lewis is having issues with a different car and a different team and all of that. There's a lot of chatter about that, and that's fine. But sort of, I don't know. I mean, Charles did well last year. Like they were for a brief period of time they were in line. Well, they were in the running for constructors, so they were up there. And it seems like this year it's just not happening for them. And it's not just Lewis, because it's obviously he's doing his bit. But and look, Charles did well last year. Last week got on podium.
Yep.
Hopefully, I think a lot of the Ferrari fans would be keen to see them, do some better performance, and maybe he can, based on
I think they've just got
a good race last year.
A slightly narrower window of car performance. Like Charles has been able to get some pretty good lap times out of that car, like more so than Lewis. But it'll be interesting to see how they go at Miami, because the track temperature last year was like over 55 degrees centigrade. It was really hot. So could affect the Red Bulls. I don't know how solid the Red Bull's going to be on a hot track temp like that. I'm tipping myself that McLaren will do really well here, just because they look after the tyres so well. But yeah, the hot track temperature could spice things up a bit as well.
And McLaren's doing well everywhere so far.
So far.
And they're trying to talk it down. I think this is where, at the last press conference last week in Jeddah, everyone's saying about how well the McLaren's doing. You had Lando who's going, everyone says we're doing really well, but we're not doing as well as you'd expect.
Well, not when he puts it into a wall. He's not.
True.
But they've got a genuine chance of taking out constructors again and the drivers' championship this year. So I mean, they've got to be throwing some focus on the 2025 car still to keep improving it, surely. Unlike some other teams who've obviously, pretty much given up on 2025 already.
Everyone wants to be the underdog, don't they?
Aston Martin, yeah.
Well, you were saying, Lockie, in regards to Aston Martin, a little bit of scuttlebutt.
Well, rumour has it that a certain employee who's been brought across there is not one bit focused on the 2025 car in any way, shape or form, Mr. Newey, and is 100% focused on the 2026 one. And apparently Mr. Stroll allegedly is not that impressed with the fact that he's not put in any focus at all on the 2025 campaign, but he would almost doubt that he was brought across to look at the 2025 car anyway. Why would they care? He didn't design it, hadn't had any input into it, so why would he bother focusing on that? At least he can focus on 2026, grab the new design and start afresh from that and try and put his stamp on that from there. So, but yeah, I don't know how serious that rumor is, but apparently a tense amount of friction. He's not responding to emails or calls or something like that is the rumor I've heard, but who knows?
They're still going to have a tough year next year with whether Stroll stays on, whether Alonso retires or not. But they're both going to be driving a brand new car next year, in theory. That's with new regulations, and sure, get Lance to get some races under his belt and get better or whatever. But yeah, they're still gonna have a hard time next year, I reckon.
I think Alonso will retire.
It's possible. Well, I think they'll do well. Like next year's a level playing field. Everyone is starting from a clean slate. So when you're building your car, you've got a good engine going into it. You've got Adrian Newey, who is well regarded as the GOAT of Formula One aero and car design. They're pumping hundreds of millions of pounds into that business. I would expect they'd be top 3 or 4. They should be with what they're doing. I think that's what their expectation would be.
The money that they put into it, they should be. They're not investing
if they invest
to finish
it well.
5th and 6th, are they?
No, exactly.
Well, they might need a driver as well.
Well, and what could happen is fortunes could change. There's discussions around the Saudis actually looking to buy Aston Martin. You've got Bahrain, who's the major shareholder of McLaren. You've got now Saudi, who's looking and speaking to Lawrence Stroll around a potential acquisition of Aston Martin. So if all of a sudden you've got Lawrence Stroll, who isn't heading up the operations, you could see that Lance won't have a seat for next year. You could see that they'll look at throwing money at another driver, and we've heard the rumours of Max Verstappen being given ridiculous money or offered ridiculous money to come across. So you could see a massive change for Aston Martin for 2026.
That was a huge number, $300 million or something. What's a bet? Max got on the phone and went, "Are you serious? Like if that number's not made up, where do I sign?"
Is it April 1st?
He will be leaving Red Bull.
Call me tomorrow.
He'll be gone.
So what is okay? So let's assume Aston Martin is 100% focusing on 2026 at the bottom end of the grid.
Mm-hmm.
At the top end of the grid, you've got McLaren, who are doing well. They want to keep ahead of Ferrari, Red Bull. They want to win the Constructors' Championship this year. They're obviously putting some development efforts still into the 2025 car. Do they put 2026 on the back seat just a tiny bit and throw some more resources into this year to get Oscar Orlando a drivers' championship, or what do they do? Like, at the risk that they are not as competitive when the 2026 car rolls out.
I reckon they'd go for a similar aero type package as what they've got now and try and do almost a carbon copy paste and then go, okay, well, how are these new electric engine units and that going to work? Because they know that the setup that they've got right now works. So if they can go, okay, well, this design works, if we can just tweak it on the 2026 and then work with that from there, I reckon that's what their focus will be on at the moment. They won't necessarily be going, let's reinvent the wheel. We've got a wheel that actually rolls at the moment. Maybe we can add some better tread to it.
I don't know if you can do that. I don't think you can copy and paste an aero
No,
philosophy.
it's a completely different car.
Oh, not
The
necessarily.
car regs are different. I mean, yeah, all the teams at the moment have a similar setup in their car and their aero, but they're all going to have to interpret the 2026 rules and do something with it. So how many variations of that do they try in the wind tunnel? You know, how many designers are they putting on that? Are they sacrificing that time for the 2025 car if they're trying to do upgrades for that? Like, I think it's a challenge for them, because if they wanted to be really competitive 2026, 27, every team would be doing what Aston Martin's doing and going, do you know what? We've rolled a car out. It's quick. Let's just make the most of what we've got. We can modify the rear wing package. We can make some small changes, but let's not focus on the 2025 car anymore and hope
Well,
we
the
can,
ones that
we
they
can
had
do
on
it.
Formula E out, because they're not worried about that anymore, and they can now focus them back on 2026. So they've still got a few more resources they can direct towards that.
Let
new
Haas win
season.
the World Championship this year and we'll move on.
But
All
Well,
their predictions would be wrong, Dan. Wrong.
they're pulling out of Formula E, but they're also committed to going into the
World Endurance Championship.
WEC in 2027. So, yeah, it must be a challenge for Zach to deploy resources effectively for IndyCar, Formula One. They've got WEC in the future. Yeah, challenge for that team. But
So if you look at all the teams, and this is where we already know, obviously we're talking about Aston Martin, who's focused on 2026. James Vowles has been very transparent in regards to the fact that they're not even looking at this year anymore. They're deployed most of their resources now on 2026. You had Zach Brown, who had even said that the 2026 car is already in the wind tunnel being tested. So there's only going to be a certain amount of resource and money that you're going to invest in the rest of 2025 when it's such a massive change.
So when someone like James Vowles actually says that, does that make it more credible or less credible? Like, because these teams, they all say and don't say certain stuff so that people know and don't know what's going on. You know, I mean, I know there's no reason to lie. It's more of a strategic sort of, this is what we think we're doing. But
I think with Williams, and this is where you look at James, is that he's been very transparent that this is a rebuild of a team. And so what he's doing is he's setting expectations not only for not the fans, but the sponsors, the actual team, as well as to what they're doing. I mean, he's talked about the fact that they weren't even looking at getting podiums till 2027. So from that regards, he's managing those expectations. He's got a solid commitment from his backers to actually see this plan through. So what he's doing is he's also reinforcing it for them to be able to say, hey, we're sticking to the plan that we've told you, and being quite open about that.
yeah, I think most teams will be putting most of their resources into next year. I think that's evident.
it is quite candid hearing James talk. Like, he is quite open and honest, it seems, about, you know, things, and some of the other team principals sort of feel a bit cagey.
They're a
but,
bit more
I
cagey.
mean, that's the game, isn't it?
No, I love the way he talks about their team and strategy and challenges they face, and he's very honest about, you know, the drivers are doing well or we could do better, and he's a good leader, he sounds like.
Yeah.
Makes it easy to get on board, doesn't it, and support them.
Yeah, it's refreshing.
And it's exciting then to see with a low bar that they've set. Williams now sitting in 5th place with 25 points in the championship so far. So it's better, they're doing better than they did last year after 5 races. And they also don't have a repair bill that they were dealing with from 2024.
Yeah.
Nothing says we got this like underdog.
They've taken all the money they saved from the crashes and put it into finding some downforce this year. So, and they've done a good job.
Allegedly,
So,
this
yeah.
race, they're predicting thunder showers on Sunday. So it
Okay.
might be thundery with showers on Sunday. So we could add a new element to Miami this weekend.
Interesting.
Of a
Something
wet race.
interesting will happen.
I tell you,
Yeah.
if it rains,
Nice. It's not very
fantastic
hot
for
in
racing.
Miami, is it? Oh,
It's anyone's race.
Here normally.
No, not. I don't know about this time of year, but yeah, they're predicting that this one Friday and Saturday are supposed to be dry, high 20s, but Sunday they're predicting thunderstorms at the start of the race. So who knows how good the weather is? But yeah, so hopefully we might get a bit of action on the track from
We can get up at
spins and
5 a.m. Australian time and start doing a rain dance and hope for the best.
I'll let you do that,
Yeah.
and I'll jump up at 6 and start the race. So.
Florida retirees come out and watch the race.
So, to that point, so as Happy was saying, is for those listeners based here in Australia, we've got on Saturday morning at 2:30 in the morning practice 1. We've got then the qualifying for the sprint race being at 6:30 a.m. Followed by we have the sprint at 2 a.m. on Sunday morning, with qualifying for the main race at 6 a.m. And then Monday morning, 6 a.m. is the main race for Miami. That gives a nice lead into our predictions as we start to think about what's going to be the result for this race. Happy, did you want to kick us off in regards to your predictions?
No, but I will. I think McLaren will continue to be strong at this track, especially on the hotter track. So I'm going Oscar for pole, Oscar for the win. I'm putting some faith in Lando that he's not going to cock it up. He's going to finish second. Third place is a tough one at the moment, but Max, I think, is doing well enough to get that car into third. So I'll go Max for third.
Write that down, KT.
Yep, got that down. Oh, Lockie, over to you then. What are your predictions for this race?
I don't think Max is going to be on the podium this weekend. I think the Red Bull's going to struggle. I do agree. I think Piastri will grab pole again. I am hoping he's actually going to win the race as well, so mark me down for that. I am going to put George Russell to come second this weekend. I think he's going to be able to guide that car home, and then Lando's going to come third.
Poor Lando.
Well, I'm just not fully. I don't think he's got the right headspace, so I think he's going to have a little squirrel somewhere, and possibly there's what they call it, sausage turn in 14-15. I think he's going to have some sort of issue on the track there, and I think that George will come in second there. So we'll see how we go.
No, all good. Got those down. Dan, are you ready, or do you want me to jump in before you?
Oh, look, I'll ready as I'll ever be because it doesn't really matter what I think anyway.
Oh no, I'm going to put Lando. You got the most points last race, so
well, yeah. But the problem is, I'm thinking what everyone else is thinking, so it won't get me. It won't actually help me leapfrog anyone.
All right, so you've got to go the
slow,
risky
steady
option.
climb down. It's a marathon.
The Hail Mary's coming.
Hail Mary's coming. Incoming Hail Marys. Yeah, I'm going to go Lando for pole.
Yeah, that's a good one.
I reckon he's going to pip the post. I think Oscar is going to win it. He's just. I mean, that's 3 in a row, so it's probably there'll be a bit more pressure on him now doing the hat trick, but he probably just keep his head down and get the job done. I'll put George for second. I like George. George is a nice driver. Handsome George. Yeah. And I'll put Charles for third.
Oh, wow. Okay.
He won last year, so, I think he can maybe
I don't think that's a bad
I don't think it's bad at all.
He could be up there.
It's not going to shake the world up, but it's it's not terrible.
I wonder about Mercedes on a hot track. They just didn't seem to be too good at that in the last few years. But I think the Ferrari could surprise. Yeah, I think they could do quite well.
Indeed, and it's interesting listening to everyone else's predictions as I'm looking at mine's because
have you just rewritten yours, Christian, after you've heard all that?
No, I haven't.
I'll have what he's having.
Please go last. Please go last.
There's the thumbname.
And you can really see I've paused the video just to share my level of excitement, and look, I'm going to leave it.
Leave it there.
Take a screenshot of
absolutely.
So who did you pick, KT? Who
So look, for pole, I've got Oscar. Again, Oscar's showing us his dominance as a world champion and
potential world champion. Let's not get ahead of ourselves.
Yeah, I know, and I don't want to put the muzzle.
Couple of races
so,
to go yet, mate.
Yep. So, but Oscar for pole, with Oscar also taking first, and Dan, you and I are a mirror image of each other. I've said George for second as well. Again, look, if the rain comes, it will make it very interesting. And to that point is Charles as well from his performance last weekend. I'd put Charles down for third at the same time. So so we could both be right and carry it through.
Well, I'm glad to see that all four of us have got slightly different predictions for this race. So we should see some different point scoring at the end of this
breakaways. Some breakaways. Here we go.
So here's a question for all of you. This is round 6. So after this round, we'll be 25% of the way through the season. If Oscar wins this race and beats Lando, what does that mean for him and McLaren and the World Drivers' Championship? Does he become the favourite?
If I'm still in front at the end of this round, can I quit and take my winnings and walk away now, or do I have to?
So I have to cook your breakfast early.
Does that solidify Oscar?
There have to be some serious conversations at McLaren about this. About I've heard some rumours or chatters or reports or whatever you want to call it about, preferential. Or maybe we discussed actually last episode about preferential upgrades for the drivers depending on who's doing what. Whether that's contractually obliged or whether that's just at the whim of what Zach feels like doing that week. It'd have to be on their mind to sort of go, well, do we give Lando, the better upgrades, the better wing? And do those sort of things, or do we sort of throw our weight behind Oscar and go, you know what, he's going to do it?
Yeah, look, I think this is where McLaren have to put their big boy pants on and go, right, what are we actually doing as a team? Is we've got someone who's showing consistent performance to lead towards a world championship, and we've just re-signed Oscar for rumoured to 2029. There's going to be clauses in regards to performance. There's rumoured clauses in regards to that if strategically Oscar is ahead of Lando, that they have to allow them to race. They can't put team orders in place. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. But if you've got Oscar clearly showing dominance, then the team needs to back him.
It's been said too with Mark Webber as Oscar's manager that he's no dummy when it comes to how the tactics of a team and how the team management kind of works. Like he'd probably know what happened in his career, and I don't know the history of any of that, but he might say, go, there was situations where I was performing better or whatever, and I got stitched up. So when we do this contract, let's make sure we've got some contingency in place to make sure this doesn't, you don't get stitched up.
Some of that in Red Bull, I'm sure.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I think he'd be.
Like I said, I don't.
He'd be a good manager to have.
A lot of his story, but yeah,
he would fight for you for sure. And like, I'm not saying that McLaren will start favouring Oscar from round 6, but it'll probably be like after halfway through the season. If there's a clear gap, they might change their strategy with their two drivers in races. But I think if Oscar has a win and out-qualifies Lando this round, or if Lando makes some sort of mistake or trips on himself or does something like that, then that's just not a good sign for Lando for this season. Like, he would really need to reverse his fortunes a bit. If Lando wins, however, okay, we're in for a tough fight. McLaren's going to have to wait and see what happens in another 6 to 10 rounds. But if Oscar has a good, solid win here and is quick in the practice sessions again, he'll really be establishing himself as the favourite in that team, I think.
I think if Lando wins, Zach will be rubbing his hands together, going, this is perfect. I've got two of these guys head to head, 1 and 2, 2 and 1, 1 and 2, 2 and 1. He'll think his Christmases have come at once.
I feel like if Lando doesn't do well this weekend, the pressure is going to just inch up a little bit more. And I think with Oscar, if he doesn't win this weekend, it's just going to be like, yeah, you know what? So what? Move on to next week. Let's just knuckle down it. And he won't be fazed by it.
I think if I was a team manager, Lachlan, I wouldn't want drivers swapping like that. I wouldn't want a Hamilton and a Rosberg like absolutely butting heads for a whole season. I would want one driver slightly ahead of the other. It makes it much easier to make a strategy call to go, right, Oscar, you've got pit priority. When do you want to pit? Lando will pit second. Lando will help you. or vice versa. I'm an Oscar fanboy, but it would be much easier to have just a little difference between the drivers because they'll support each other. The second driver helps the first driver. You win the constructors' title by doing that, and you don't get some of the friction in the team. So, yeah, I think
I agree, but
Yeah, I
where it
know.
stands right now, Zach's going. It's for McLaren.
Either
it's
way.
win-win because they're going to get the constructors.
Yeah, exactly. And like we said a week or two ago, McLaren aren't going to think about favouring a driver until much later in the season. Their concern is the constructors' title, which they're well on track to getting at the moment. So, yeah.
It's just like Max and Yuki.
Very similar, yes.
Let's hope. Let's hope Yuki and Liam can do better this round.
Who doesn't love Yuki? Yuki's a nice guy.
He's cool.
He should do better.
And
he'll get there.
doing to get a reasonable position this round would be nice too, actually.
Yeah. It's nice to see him still in the car. There's been no more gossip or news about Doohan being kicked out by Colapinto. So, and we're into round 6 this weekend. So.
Well, no, rumour has it he's got a $10 million sponsor that's actually secured him the place for the rest of the season because of the money he's brought to the team with that sponsor. Because if he goes out, that sponsor leaves.
If that's true, good on him.
All right, so Miami this weekend, we've got a few talking points that we'll be going through for next week, so be sure to tune in to the review of the race, plus also some further discussion on what's happening on and out of the paddock. Until then, we will see you on the next lap. And that's the checkered flag for this episode of The Downshift. Thanks for tuning in and hanging out with us in the paddock. If you enjoyed the ride, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe so you never miss a lap. And hey, if we've earned it, drop us a 5-star review. It really helps us climb the grid and reach more motorsport fans. Tune in next time as we keep pushing flat out to bring you fresh, current and entertaining content. Until next time, keep it fast, keep it fun, and we'll catch you on the next lap.